gentlemen, it is time for prize fighters, circus freaks, and gangsters. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Greta.
And we are here to discuss the food, fashion, fighting, and fraud of the 19th century. Today we're discussing Warrior Season 3, Episode 1. We are back to Warrior.
Yes, and boy oh boy, do we get fraud.
Dun, dun, dun!
Or impending fraud anyway for this episode.
This episode is entitled Exactly the Wrong Time to Get Proud. And honestly, I can't say that I identified the reason why it was called that. Did you?
Oh, absolutely. For me, I saw like 3 different times it happened. And once again, it was said. And we'll get there. Promise.
All right.
I won't let it go by. But we get to start out with a dark and mysterious scene once again. Always a good opening. You know something is going to go down.
Well, we started with the single longest, most exhaustive recap of 2 seasons of a TV show I've ever seen in my entire life. That was lengthy.
That's true. You could have skipped it, but I mean, I think it was a good warm-up and get everybody kind of back up where we were. Because, look, there are a lot of threads to pull together here.
I feel like that was just directed to people who take a lot of Ritalin, and that is it.
Or alternately, if they wanted to bring in people who had their friends are like, okay, this TV show I've been telling you about all the time, it's going to start its 3rd season, and so, like, here's the quick catch-up. So, you know,
okay.
Either one.
Yes. Well, it was mostly just a lot of yelling. Like 2 words of yelling, and then a hi-ya, and a kick to the face, and then something gets smashed, and then 2 more words of dialogue. And it did catch the person. It caught the people up.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So Ah Sahm is eating soup.
But before we see him eating soup, we get to see some Long Z dudes unloading mysterious stuff from a cart. And if you kind of know some Chinese, you can see that they're labeled tea. And I'm doing air quotes around tea.
Ooh, look at you identifying Chinese characters.
It's
done.
Food, of course.
Yeah.
And I think somebody will point out that they're probably the simplified ones, but blah, blah, blah. Who cares? That's how I can tell what they are.
Yeah. And credit to you because I took Chinese, although it was 25 years ago, but I took Chinese and I didn't see it, but I wasn't even looking for it. So
yeah. And yeah, we get to see Ah Sahm eating soup with some stink face on.
And, I have to say right here that I wish we used Asian soup etiquette in the United States. Like, I want to pick up my bowl and slurp my soup when it's delicious. You know what I mean?
Right?
Especially, like, if you get a delicious, like, cream of blueberry soup or something like that. Like, I want to slurp that down and wipe my face with
instead of chasing all the little blueberries around with your stupid spoon.
Yeah. No, that's terrible. God, it's so delicious, though.
But yeah, Ah Sahm does his best sort of mean Joe Green and gets a kid to go run an errand for him. I mean, it's the kids are staring at him like, ooh, it's that guy.
It's right out of a cowboy movie, right? Hey, you there, kid. Flips him a quarter and he's like, yeah, go get me so-and-so, the sheriff.
Yeah. But I also have to say that the carpenters on the back lot for the Chinese set were busy in the off season because they rebuilt that.
Oh, so in the extras this year, instead of having an extra for every episode, they just had like a 5-minute extra about how the entire production went green. So they explained how they reused so much of the old set and they upcycled all the lighting. So they reused all of the lighting and they introduced all of the sustainability stuff to make the production super green. So that was really, really cool. But they were very, very busy in building and rebuilding this set.
And so Joe Pesci goes from his like, I'm just annoyed, and heads in to the Long Z, and you could just feel he's got like that kind of unhinged Joe Pesci energy, like, I want to start something, but I'm not going to start something, I'm going to make you start something.
I thought at first I thought you said Joe Pesci like as an accident, and then I was like, oh yes, yes, he totally had the Joe Pesci like the go get your shine box energy. He was ready to start kicking somebody's teeth in with his wingtips.
But it was still like, I'm not going to start something. I'm going to make you start it. It was, you could just. The screws were not all the way screwed in.
No. So it's Ah Sahm facing up against 6 Long Z, all of whom have hatchets. And then the one guy does the thing that is just a blessing to anybody who knows anything about martial arts. When anybody has a weapon and they touch you with that weapon, that's it. You win right there. The second that they just hold it in your arm's breadth, like, here's my weapon. And that's what he did. He just put his hatchet right next to Ah Sam's head, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna use this on you. And he was like, oh, thank you for this hatchet, sir. I'm gonna kill you all now.
Yeah, I mean, it was the most sort of, arm breaking, head smashing, hatchet chopping mayhem you would want for a cold open. I mean, they're just like, we're here. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. He delivered a sidekick that was so hard to that extra. I mean, he just blew the man out of his shoes. He must have broken that guy's ribs. Like, in real life, he hit that guy hard. And, yeah. He killed one guy with a hatchet to the neck. He broke some guy's arm. He broke the leg of another guy. And then he's like, well, it's me against 6. I took out these 6. Let's go find some more people to kick the shit out of.
Yeah, that's when I was like, yeah, this is some Joe Pesci, like, not like self-preservation doesn't seem to be the first thing on his mind. Like, I know, like, the kid goes into the hopway and it's like, Ah Sahm said to come, that. But you're just like,
yeah, he's in there for the murder. Yeah, he chops a hand off a guy, kills another guy.
The horror movie effects were in effect.
One guy holds up his hands to block the attack and has his whole hand on the left side chopped off, except for his thumb. His thumb's sticking up, and then most of his fingers cut off the other hand, and it's just like, oh my god, that poor man.
I hate that stuff, but I was like, okay, good horror movie effects. Okay, fine.
In the remake of Evil Dead, they had an even nastier one where a person held up their hand to block a hatchet and caught it right in between the middle finger and the ring finger. You could have caught that with that one. Yeah, the hatchet stopped right at their wrist. Whew, that was nasty. But so it could have been worse. But yeah, and then he splashed the other guy with awful. So it's like, well, you have a bunch of cuts on you, sir. So here's blood poisoning. You're gonna go die in 4 days.
Okay, I just have to say that Chinese slaughterhouse, or it was really more of a butcher shop, was a very good example of the difference between like what Chinese people expect their butcher shops to look like. The amount of vinegar and carbolic soap that they must have been using in that place was epic, because Chinese cooks aren't going to put up with like bad spoiled meat. It needs to be fresh or forget it.
Yeah, and it's funny that the American perception of Chinese food is that it's all cats and whatever. But every time that I ever write about something having to do with Chinese food, there's always some comment about how it's cats and rats and this and that, and it's like, all right, jackass.
Yeah, they're not gonna put up with bad food, crappy food. It's got to be fresh, and sort of like the variety of meats in there and the size of the littleish piggies that were in there, like that was really typical. Like an 18th century housewife could have dealt with one of those pigs herself, and like a 19th century like manor house, that would be typical. You just have like whole animals delivered that size. So those were very appropriate size animals to have in what was effectively a butcher shop.
Oh, so this like hogzilla phenomenon that goes on in Arkansas and stuff is a product of the giant hogs that we've been growing in the American like farming industry?
Well, partly, but also pigs are kind of a little bit like lizards. Like humans get to a certain size and they just stop. But other animals, like you look at, say, those big honkin' like male fur seals and pigs and even cows, as they get older, they just keep getting bigger, just like alligators.
Oh, or people from Wisconsin.
There you go. So these pigs that are living in the wild, they are living much longer than the domesticated pigs are living. Like the pigs that they were showing there probably would have been under or not much over a year old.
So that's how we're ending up with these humongous cats in Australia then. It's the same phenomenon. I thought that was only limited to lizards, but now I know it's
I don't know, different animals.
Well, they have gigantic feral cats. Like if a man holds up his arms out at arm's length, he's holding the scruff or the tail of the cat and the back of his neck. Like they're bigger than wild cats in Australia in some places.
Okay, that's more selective breeding. As far as I know, felines aren't subject to continuous growth.
Oh, okay. Well, they're getting very large out there, but they have very varied diets. Like the one cat that they found had 27 species inside its stomach.
Yeah, but think about it. The biggest cat is always going to win. I mean, that's just plain old like selective breeding, selective evolution. Yeah. Like that's just the biggest cat's gonna win.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's the only advantage for cats since physics don't even apply.
Okay. But anyway, so the Hopway show up and with the Long Z, and they get the fight that they've been waiting for, we've been waiting for, everybody's been waiting for.
Oh yeah. Because as soon as Ah Sahm gets thrown out the front window, the reinforcements show up, and then we have even more fighting. It is amazing. And we get Young Jun versus Li Yong at first, which went exactly as I expected it to go. Li Yong just disarms him and flips him before he can even do anything. But then we get a Taekwondo jump kick to save the day. That's a Bruce Lee special as well. And it was a rematch of Li Yong versus Ah Sahm, which was really fun.
And once again, they're doing the thing where they sort of like introduce it to us, they get us started, and then nope. It's only episode 1. You don't get to see this.
Yeah, exactly. It's all a tease. But it was still fun. We got so much like Bruce Lee back fists and jump kicks. Yeah. It was. He had his Bruce Lee turned all the way up, which is amazing because of the new character that they introduced later on, and I'll go into it soon.
Yeah.
But, so the cops come in and break up the riot.
Kablamo!
Yes, O'Hara is here to save the day again.
And I did sort of have like, just because I was watching this the way I was watching it, I started watching the background actors doing the fighting in the background to like keep the background busy. Mm-hmm. And you could see like the same sort of like routines repeated over and over. But I'm like, those guys had to do that like 100 times probably. So the fact that they actually had like a set of moves that they had on repeat totally made sense.
I'm sure they were using the stuff that they do for the morning warm-ups. I'm sure that they were just practicing stuff that they practice every single morning so that they're like, here you go, when you don't know what else to do this. And they probably have like 5 or 6 of them so they can just go through them easy and everybody knows what move they're defending, right away. Right. That way, yeah, it's just a dance.
Yeah. And so, like, yeah, you saw the same routine go through, but you're like, they're actually doing moves. They're not just back there kind of like waving their arms around like jackasses. So,
yeah, there was actually a
cool.
woman that was hired. She was one of the like breakthrough martial artists of the 1960s, and she had no background in martial arts. It was just dance. And so she was the one who incorporated rhythm into it, and then Jackie Chan really grabbed that and made it even more. So it's really a dance now. It's a violent dance. It's so much fun to watch.
There you go. So O'Hara calls out Ah Sahm, and, we got our little expo dump, and we sort of see that the Buckley and Mai Ling make my enemies your enemies plan is like, it's in effect. And, and Hopway territory is suffering.
Yeah. It is, but boy, it is just the most beautiful. I mean, you want to go to this Chinatown, don't you? Like, I want to go eat dumplings with Hong in this Chinatown. It's so amazing.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, Hong's thing about egg tarts, I was like, oh, dude, that's perfect. It's perfect.
I couldn't wait for you to tell us about it.
Okay, so the egg and cream tart is actually a Portuguese thing that was brought to China by the Portuguese explorers back in like the 16th century, sort of. And so it exists and it continues to exist in Macau, and then it just sort of moved up the Pearl River to Canton, or Guangzhou as it's known now. And Foshan is like right across the river from Guangzhou, and so egg tart sort of spread out from Hong Kong and Macau, like up the Pearl River and then out along the coast. And I was like, yes. And I can see there.
So is that an omelet?
No. So it's like a little teeny pie. Like, seriously, if you just do like your thumb and four fingers into a circle, both of them, not like quarter size, but like, a big coaster size. And so it's egg and milk. The version that you find in most like Hong Kong bakeries now uses condensed milk because that was the dairy that most people have had access to in tropical areas for like the past 100 years or so. But
that makes sense. It won't. Oh, I'm sorry. It won't
right.
spoil.
But so it was an egg and dairy and sugar tart, and it's basically a custard tart, but it's super duper eggy. And then you have all these variations of the pastry crust underneath. But because it's such a mild flavor, like getting the balance perfect is like, it's an art.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, because he's actually bemoaning the fact that he finally found a good egg tart stand, and then the cops like rousted the guy or whatever. Shut it down.
Shut it down. I was like, I feel you, man. I feel ya. And so we go from the egg tarts getting shut down to Chinese newspapers.
Yes, and Young Jun just losing his shit. Like, he's clearly unraveling under the stress of having to run a tong.
Yes. And another interesting thing here, like Chinese newspapers were some of the most prolific presses on the West Coast in this time and place. Because,
were they?
Yeah, because you think about it, like the Chinese had been writing and publishing and printing newspapers for much longer than there'd even been America. So just the publishers just showed up and they already knew how to be a newspaper. And, and the press that they showed in there was totally a valid press for what it would be. There were more sophisticated ones on the East Coast at this point, but we're still on the wild frontier in San Francisco. So it's like, yes, Chinese newspapers would totally have been a thing, and there are probably like 10 in this tiny little Chinatown.
Well, that is super cool to know. I mean, you realize that, or we learned that the block printing press comes from Korea and things like that, but then you kind of, there's 2,600 characters or something like that in Chinese, and it's like, I don't even understand how the hell a Chinese newspaper would work back in the day. There's too many goddamn characters. I know that it's just combinations of characters, but still.
Right, and so there's like a simplified set that they would use for spreading the news.
Okay. Is that where the simplified characters were derived from then? It makes sense. They were easier to print that way and things.
I don't actually know exactly what the history of simplified characters are. I think it has to do with sort of the coalescing of Chinese kind of around Mandarin. But I do know that, like, you could read a newspaper with a much sort of more limited set of knowledge of Chinese characters versus reading literature, versus reading scholarly literature. Like every time you went up into sort of more sophisticated discourse, there's like another set of characters you need to know. And newspapers, they wanted sort of everybody to read it. So it's sort of...
Yeah. Well, and newspapers at this time really were just clickbait, too. It was just a headline. Sometimes it didn't even have the names of the people who were involved.
Yeah.
You were just expected to know.
But you're right. Yeah. Young Jun is like just not doing well. He is... like, he is feeling himself adrift without his dad kind of even behind him or around you. He's just like, yeah, like he's just untethered.
Well, and we get the explanation at the end of the episode that they can't, because they're not making any collections because the cops keep tearing the Chinatown apart and they keep constricting the amount of business that can be done, that there's no collections, so they can't pay for their opium from Happy Jack, which means that they can't make money. So they're like, he's fucked. So now he's leaning on these people.
He is spiraling for sure. Yeah.
And so now he's leaning on the people that he's supposed to be protecting, trying to get money from them that they don't have, and then freaking out that they don't have it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, across town, Mai Ling So she's lost the Feng Hai. I mean, they were a mess anyway. They probably weren't worth the trouble. But she is consolidating power in the face of the crackdowns. You can totally see, like, hey, I've got an in with the cops. If you're under my protection, you can still run your businesses. But if you're out there, kind of doing your own Tong thing, it's too much strife. We're at war. So come under my umbrella. And
yeah, because she has that deal with Buckley. So now they're
and so the Zheng Yao Tong, led by Kong Pak, is like, you know what? Fine.
So do you recognize this gentleman?
Yes!
Okay.
Yes, I did!
Oh, of course you do, because you recognize him for something entirely different than what I do. So you tell me how you know him.
Because I was looking at him like, why is he familiar? And so he like bows, and then when he looks up, I was like, oh, it's the chairman from American Iron Chef with Alton Brown.
Exactly.
It's because it was that look up, it like snap. I was like, that's who it is.
Yup, exactly. And so Mark Dacascos is, and I'm just going to go into this very briefly because this guy's a legend in martial arts. His dad, at the same time Bruce Lee was in California creating Jeet Kune Do, Mark Dacascos' dad was in Hawaii. His name's Al Dacascos, and he started this thing called Kaju Kempo or American Kempo, and it is essentially Jeet Kune Do, but with different influences because the man was in Hawaii and he was learning Chinese Kenpo, and he was combining it with different martial arts that he was learning down there, like Filipino martial arts and things like that, and they came up with a different system that was super hardcore. So Mark Dacascos becomes this like champion of this street fighting system, and then goes into like demonstration martial arts and stuff like that. And he becomes a Taekwondo champion and all these different, racking up all these champions, and then went into martial arts, and he was like movies, and he was going to be the next Bruce Lee. And in fact, he played on the TV show The Crow.
Right.
He played Eric Draven in that, which was Bruce Lee's son's role in the movies. And that production was actually stopped by a death on set. A stunt performer got killed, and they were like, "Oh Christ, this thing really is
The
doomed
Crow
and cursed."
is cursed. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've loved Mark Dacascos ever since the 90s. So when he showed up on screen, I stood up and started yelling because this guy is legit, and I've loved him forever.
Yeah, I when he showed up on American Iron Chef, I was like, yeah, this guy is actually somebody. So I kind of looked him up, and so, but that he definitely has that particular way of looking up from a bow. That's like it always catches the same way.
Yeah, Iron Chef gave him this gravitas that he never had before. So, like, because he was really more of like a springy, like he was in a movie that I loved with Kadeem Hardison from A Different World, So they were in a buddy movie before like Rush Hour came out that was very similar in tone. And so, like, that's how I remember him, is doing capoeira and like doing really bouncy, quick moves and being like kind of a grumpy but spazzy guy. And then in this, he's like, there's a lot of gravity to what he's doing, and his intonations are deep. And, he's the old wise man kind of thing. I love it.
Yeah, and Mai Ling for once is like playing it smart. She's like, she's got the old guy, she's bringing him in kind of against his will, but she's like, please be on my council. Again, I'm sort of honoring your years of experience. And he's like, you know what? I'm too old for this shit. Yes, I would love to sit at the big table and be kind of an underling for a change.
Well, which is, of course, all bullshit, because you see she's looking at Li Yong the entire time, and she's like, I brought your boy in. He's going to be my pet. He's going to sit on this council and vote the fucking way that you tell him to vote because he's your bestie. And so they're all just like, God damn it. And you can tell Li Yong's sick of this bitch. Mark Dacascos doesn't like her at all. And like everybody's just like, would you just hurry up and die, please?
Yeah. But yeah. So this is, for me, Mai Ling kind of like climbing up onto other people's shoulders for her power. I thought this was the first hint at this is the wrong time to get proud.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah. So, And then we get the second one. We get
Oh,
Leary.
Leary hates politics.
And
Leary hates politics.
yeah, but probably for all the same reasons you do, and I do too, that nobody's in here actually to solve any problems. They're mostly just in here to get one over on each other.
Yeah. And if it would all go way more smoothly if you would just mean what you say and say what you mean, so we can just get it over with. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
But for people like this, that's no fun. But yeah, he comes in and he's like, all right, guys, we could solve this problem really quick if everybody would just be reasonable. And they're like, yes, but that would entail me being slightly less rich. So no.
Yeah, and the one guy holds up this excuse that, well, my lumber costs. And Leary's like, yeah, your lumber costs? It's your lumber costs, is it? All right, sure. And then, like, the meeting's adjourned, and he's like, lumber costs.
All right, I'm
going
to
to
go do something about
Yeah,
this.
all right. So I'm going to go see this lumber guy.
And shroop, we cut over to Lucy, and she's got on a nice dress. I'm like, where is she?
She's in a nice house.
Yes, it's got rugs and carved wood tables and a sideboard and crystal glasses. And I'm like, what the hell?
And a fucking 12-foot ceiling with 2 feet of crown molding.
Right? And O'Hara's like, well, I promise I'm gonna be chief any day now. And he's looking down at his shoes and twisting his toes and everything. I promise.
When I'd get in trouble, anybody in my house would get in trouble back in the day, we were called to the living room. And then you would sit on a very uncomfortable but pretty piece of furniture and get told about yourself by my parents. And he looks exactly like he has been sent to the living room and he's getting it.
And she's like, nope, not coming back. Nothing's changed, so I'm not showing up. And then some dude comes in. I'm like, is that Lucy's brother? That can't be right, because I'm pretty sure Lucy was also Irish and he ain't.
No.
But he does do O'Hara the favor of offering him a drink, which he knocks back.
I love that the guy's like, so, you think you're going to be getting your family out of here anytime soon? Because they're very nice, but
a lot of them.
There's a lot of them, and I want them out of my house, please.
Yeah, and we do figure out at the end that Sis, this is the brother-in-law. Sis married up, and so they've got a big house, and they can shove the poor relations into some extra room somewhere, and yeah, whatever.
Flowers in the attic style. Those kids are going to end up dating in the attic in 10 years.
There are 5 of them, so...
Yeah. Well, pretty soon there's going to be 10.
Shit. Terrible.
They're not in an Austrian basement, so maybe they won't. All right. So,
okay.
And then Chow's running Ah Toy's place, which I found interesting, right?
Yes. And yeah, Ah Sahm and Ah Toy, they're kind of catching up, and they're like, what's up with Wang Chao? Young Jun's too itchy. And Ah Toy is doing the, you could run this better. And he's like, nah, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be a running theme with both, I keep forgetting what Mark Dacascos' name, Kong Pak. Kong Pak keeps saying the same thing to Lee Young, you're supposed to be running shit. What are we doing here?
And Lee Young's like, nah, I'm just a simple monk, homicidal maniac. No.
I'm just a man in a duster looking to kill somebody.
And then we get Buckley and Mai Ling, and Buckley thinks he's got Mai Ling under his thumb, and Mai Ling thinks she's got Buckley under his thumb. And it is kind of fun because, unlike Penny, who was just coming straight at Buckley, and you can't do that, both of them are coming at each other diagonally. And I don't think neither of them has, I think they have the measure of each other, but I don't think they have a realistic assessment of what the other person's position is.
They really are like two people who are holding onto the same piece of driftwood, out in the ocean, and they each have a knife in one hand, and they're like, I'm going to stab you the first chance I get. Well, as soon as we get to shore, right, I'm going to stab you. And the other one's like, I'll stab you first, but we got to get to the shore first. It's the dumbest shit I've ever seen.
It is. And she pulls the Darth Vader, fine, I'll just change the agreement. I'm like, Yeah. Yeah, you do need to remember, Mai Ling, that any moment Buckley can still pull the rug out from under you. Like, you have no recourse.
She does have one cold line at the end, though, because she hands him money, and then she's like, and if glad handing people is too much trouble for you, just do what I do. Imagine yourself slitting their throat as she's staring into his eyes, and it's like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
She's not leaving any doubt. She is not making this passive aggressive. It's completely aggressive. I love it.
It's aggressive. Exactly. Then we get Leary back at the bar, and his boyos are like, hey, why aren't you doing all the things that we want you to do like yesterday? And he's like, I'm trying.
But instead of like the last time where it ended up he'd go outside and kick the shit out of somebody, this time he's learned how to handle and deflect that criticism. Oh, I'm going to buy you a round of beers. Well, I don't want a handout. I'm not giving you a handout. I'm just buying you a beer. Well, why aren't you doing your job?
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my job. But instead of getting mad about it, he's just like, these old people are, it's like, you just got to figure out where to put the pressure on and then dig your thumbs in. I got it. Just give me a sec.
Yeah. And he's like, and he kind of does do you want this done fast and bad, or you don't want this done right? Because it's going to take a little time to do it right. And they're like, I guess.
And you have seen my fast and bad, sir. May I point you to the explosions?
And we do sort of a really funny cut from one of the beer pitchers, which I'll comment on later, to another beer pitcher in another bar, and we get to see Lee working as a bouncer in the bad part of town.
Yeah. So whereas Leary has grown as a human being since last season, and he has improved, and he has learned how to handle people in a non-violent way, Lee has gone in the exact opposite way. And so where he could handle things in a very non-violent way, he just smashes people up and beats them up and then takes their money and is like, that's for the damage that you just caused in getting your ass kicked by me.
And Eddie tries with a southern aphorism, I'll hang you up like mother's whitewashing. And the guy's like, what? What are you talking about? Which cracked me up.
Well, my mom is southern, and when she gets tired or upset, she always drops into her southern accent and her and like these weird, like, I'm gonna skin you like a possum, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's no possums.
There must be a writer who's been tossing these in the whole time, and somebody finally got sick of it. And it's like, yeah, the characters also have to be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
But it was amazing because it seemed dead on, and especially since he's British. So when you hear him speak with a British accent, and then you hear him crush this southern thing, it's really impressive.
Beating up people, bad for his CTE. Gives him the headaches.
Gives him all the headaches. And what's better for headaches than lots and lots of opium?
Just a little more laudanum straight to the back of the throat. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Why not?
But yeah, we're back in another bar, Toy's bar, the nice one, and Young Jun is coming. He's coming for Wang Chao, and Chao is like, he's playing it cool. He's like, you have to calm the fuck down. And of course, Young Jun's reaction to that?
Yeah, just get more hyper. And then Chao shuts him down with the greatest line ever. He just is like, yeah, Zing said the exact same thing that you're saying to me. And then he just walks away, and it's like, yeah, Zing's either dead or he's in Alcatraz, so you can end up like that if you want. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just see Wang Chao flexing like that unique power he has, and it must have, I think, sort of surviving slavery in Cuba, he was like, I will choose very carefully when to get upset, because he's sort of activating his superpower of like, no, this is not the time. This is not the time.
Yeah, well, and we kind of skipped over it, but at the very beginning, he had an interaction with these white trash guys selling him guns.
Yes,
and he saw these he saw his life flash right before his eyes there, because people are constantly threatening his life. So It's like, I don't even think it was necessarily the slavery. It's like every day of his life, like he gets somebody putting a gun in his eye or a knife to his throat, or like at the beginning of this scene, Young Jun throws a hatchet down into Ah Toy's table, which I feel like Ah Toy's going to stab him about later on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she is.
That was a nice ass table he destroyed.
Yes, yeah. I just think like this is the choice Wang Chao has made. You know, he is going to choose when to fight very carefully and just, you know, let things go that would make a lot of other people just lose their shit. Like, yeah, when they drop the cash on the ground and Wang Chao bends down to pick that up, he's like, that's going to cost you extra.
Yeah. I guess the point was to make him bend his knee to the white man.
Right.
And he's like, fine, my knee touches the ground. Yours are going to touch the ground soon.
Yeah.
And then there's also, luckily for everyone, that Hong exists, and he's such a sweetheart. So he's his entire job now is just keep Young Jun from fucking anything up too bad.
Yeah, he's like following Young Jun around with a fire extinguisher, basically.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry. He's having a bad day. You're doing a great job, boss. You're doing a great job.
Yes.
It's his entire job. Meanwhile, he's a vicious murderer. He just does it with a smile on his face.
Oh, absolutely. So there was that line when Ah Sahm and Wang Chao are sort of talking. Yeah, they talk about Mai Ling ratting him out to Young Jun and saying, oh, yeah, it's your brother. And Wang Chao just goes, a cold and reckless and yet ultimately brilliant move on our part. Classic Mai Ling. I love that.
The man's delivery is just so somber and perfect and polished. Like, every syllable that man says is solid gold.
Yes. And like I'm saying, like, he just has like this superpower of being able to turn down the temperature in any room where it's starting to get head up.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is when he says to Ah Sahm, now is not the time to get proud. Now is the time to adapt or die. Because
because he tips him off to the score. Yes.
Right.
And Ah Sahm says, we're not thieves. We're not going to steal all this money you saw. And he's like, yeah, you fucking should. You need money.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's when he says, yeah, we can't pay for the opium that we bought. Like, we can't move anything. That's why we're freaking out, and the whole thing's a disaster. And he's like, oh, you need cash? Go rob these white guys.
I know where cash is, and boy, did they ask for it. And I swear to God, this must be kind of Wang Chao's motto. Like, pride gets you killed.
And also, Chao always knows somebody who's going to fuck up anybody who ever messes with him. So, like, because he knows everybody and he knows everything. So you cross Chao, he knows 6 people who want you dead anyway. He'll just put a word in their ear and it's over for you. So why anybody would cross him in the first place makes no sense. He knows 6 people who want you dead right now because Chao has something that they need or want.
So now, like, this hint has sort of been dropped through the episode, and I was like, did I miss something? That Chief Flanagan has died? And O'Hara, like, that's why he thinks he's up for the chiefship. And, like, it was sort of dropped, and Buckley makes it plain. Yes, Flanagan has died. Yes, you think you're going to be chief, and no, you're not. And here's the guy who is.
Yeah. He really had strung him along, too. Like, yeah, you're acting chief. You're good. No, he died in that explosion, didn't he? Or he had a heart attack right after it? Something like that.
Well, the actual actor died between season 2 and season 3. Yeah, I went back and looked it up. I'm like, did I miss something? Because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, did we see him die in season 2? But no, the actor actually died.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. Anyway, so we get to meet Colonel Benjamin Atwood, who was a Tong buster back in New York City.
Yeah, and I just because I can't help myself, I decided to look it up because I knew that there were Tongs in New York. And I wasn't sure what the deal with them was. Well, there were really no Tongs in New York at this time, so they did a little historical, mixing up of years because until 1906, there really weren't any Tongs anywhere except for in San Francisco. I mean, there was a little bit, but there was no real easy way for Chinese people to get anywhere else because, travel was difficult. Right. It was mostly illegal for them to be in the United States after 1888. And after the 1906 earthquake destroyed all of Chinatown, there was nothing in Chinatown for the Tongs to do, or like they just had to leave. So then they spread all out, and a lot of them went to New York, and They were really in control of New York until 1931 in certain parts, but because of the Japanese invasion of China, like everybody had already been giving as much money as they could to China, but then the Depression hit and everybody's money ran out.
Right.
And so when the Japanese invaded China, they sent every penny that they possibly could to China for the defense of the Chinese, because the Japanese were doing the Manchuria thing.
Right.
Committing, as many atrocities as they could per minute.
Blah. Yeah, that's, yeah. But back with O'Hara, he has a big mad on now. Big one. And I was like, so is he going to go to Lee's bar or Leary's bar? That was literally my question.
You knew where he was going.
But
he doesn't have anybody else to talk to.
No,
Lucy's gone,
yeah.
so.
And I should have guessed that because he's like super bummed out and scraping the bottom of the barrel, it's to the Barbary Coast bar, the bad bar, Lee's bar, which we see later. But that was my question. I was like, which bar? That's the only question.
Yes. But he's going to a bar. Hey, at least he didn't go gamble.
Right.
He's improved.
Or something. I don't know. Anyway. So after O'Hara's big bum out, we get a slight diversion. We go out to the country. Ah Toy gets her day out. She sees her protege, who has decided she's going to suck it up and adjust to life in the country. And she sees Nellie.
Yes, Nellie. It is paradise. It's the perfect counterpoint to my mention of the Japanese invasion of Manchuria. Because she is, sun-blasted, everything, there's a light halo around everything.
Yeah.
There's flowers everywhere. All you need is a little girl in a sundress with a garland of flowers around her head, like skipping about.
And while I had said before, like, when everything's going too well, I'm always going to be looking for, like, well, that's it. We're on the downhill now. Like, this is a little too obvious. Like, this is a setup. And this cannot last. Because it's like, ah, Toy, you should come live in the country with me. You should give up your life of crime. And she's like, oh, that does sound like a good idea. I'm like, okay, yeah. This is not going to happen the way they're talking about right now.
Wow. All right, little Miss Glass Half Empty. Do you have any more evil prognostications? Do you want to tell me how bad my future is going to go? Jesus.
No. You live in the real world. You're not in a story arc that only has 10 episodes.
Well, we go from that to Chao being the world's greatest slum tour guide. Slum tour guide.
Yeah. Apparently
They're
he didn't
slumming.
get X'd out of the books after the whole Dragon Dance disaster. I guess they decided that was more exciting than terrifying or something.
I guess. But he would own TikTok now. Can you imagine? Like a well-spoken Chinese man in a top hat doing poverty tourism? Yeah, he'd own TikTok.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, he brings them to Mai Ling's house, and she is doing her best. I am a China doll. Come into my gracious home. I'm so meek and mild and just barely assertive at all.
Well, so was poverty tourism a brand new thing at this time?
Well, no, because remember in Gangs of New York, you had the good Christians wandering around there as well. I mean, the whole thing with women sort of going in, because women weren't allowed to have real jobs and do anything, so they would sort of tour around slums and everything and bring people jam to make their day better.
So this is like the Women's Temperance Society or whatever.
Right. Some version of that. Though in this case, it was more, somehow Wang Chao, as we know, he knows everybody. And again, these women have nothing to do. And he's like, hey, how about I show you, Chinatown, it's coming back, and I have a friend there who, would love to sort of show you how she's living. And they're like, oh, well, I'm bored of my needlework, so let's go.
It is a brilliant way to humanize. I mean, it's used now. It's been, there's whole programs, like government programs, to encourage it, because apparently it brings money and stability into very, very dicey areas.
Right. And if people, if there is a point to holding it together and people can actually do things that make money so they can, buy things and don't have to steal stuff. Like, most people don't want to steal stuff. They would much rather get paid for doing work.
Yeah, there's not a lot of risk that comes with just going to a job and getting a paycheck.
Yeah, being a criminal is high stress. Like, nobody wants to do that all the time. Well, almost nobody wants to do that all the time.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's why you see all these, successful gangsters always go legit at the end. It's because making that money the hard way is the hard way.
Yeah, and so, Mai Ling, she speaks English. She serves functionally like what these ladies would consider a proper tea, like very exotic, cups and plates and treats, but it's still like what they would expect for an afternoon tea. And the one purple lady is like, wow, you are pretty civilized. Can I show you off to my friends?
So she mentions to Lee Young that they bought this house specifically for this purpose. But wow, so the tablecloth on this table looked like a giant doily, basically. What is that? I don't know what that's called, but it was a doily made of gold. And it was crazy. Like, what is that pattern called again? Paisley. It was a Paisley pattern, and it was gold thread. It was wild.
Yeah, but I mean, they have a whole inside pond where they're like floating lotus flowers on it. And you can see the women were like a little bit like, wow, I thought my house was nice, but I don't have an indoor pond with like all these fancy tiles and birds and like, whoa, I got to up my game. God damn.
Yeah, this lady lives in the ghetto, and look how dope her house is.
Right. And Leong is just like, what are you? This is embarrassing to my warrior soul. And Mai Ling is like, no, man, this is how you expand and stabilize and get rich. You can't fight your whole life. And he's like, I am having a feeling about this.
Well, so she gives this advice to these women because the women make an amazing point. I'm glad that they spoke it out loud in this, because she's a woman who has, in a world where these women have no right to do anything, this woman does not even have the legal right to exist as a living creature in the United States. Women have been barred from coming in. And so they're looking at her like she controls a fucking gang, and she has a house that's nicer than mine. How do we get on this type time?
Well, I don't think they recognize her as a gang leader. They just, because they talk about her as a business
leader.
Yeah. Though I did think it was interesting. They give her a little more backstory, and they talk about how she sold weapons from her husband's house. And she's like, but I was a persecuted woman. But the fact that she raised a secret stash to travel to America by selling weapons, I actually think that's probably pretty true.
She's Chow. She's Lady Chow now.
Right, yeah.
You would think she respected Chow more because of it, but no. But so...
No, she sees everyone as competition, though.
Yeah, she's real, 1980s American-minded in that way. But, so she says, be smarter than the men to these women. And then immediately disregards her own advice when Lee Young's like, these women are mocking you with their faces. And she's like, no, they're not. You're an idiot. You don't see what I see. We gotta expand into these women. And he's like, no, mark my words. These ladies are not your friends. And she's like, I got this. Not listening to her own advice at all.
Well, I think it's two ways. Like, she's seeing a bigger vision than Lee Young is seeing, but I also think she doesn't understand how tenuous her connection is. And she is a plaything. Like, once they get sick of, well, we're done learning about Chinese culture for this year, so no, we're never going to call you. We'll never answer your card. We'll never let you in again. You are amusement to us.
Yeah, and I think that is something that, it's a nice takeaway for all of us, is that, even when you think you have the upper hand, if you are in a position where you want to be liked or you want the respect of the person that you're, negotiating against, you are always at a disadvantage, no matter how much leverage you have. And that's where Mai Ling finds herself here, because she desperately wants these women to like her and respect her as a peer.
Right. And it is interesting that they have this thread for Mai Ling, is that she keeps trying on sort of her acting ability and her acting meek thing. And she was pulling it out here, and, it hasn't worked in the past, but she's found an audience that is ready to eat it up. Like, young Jin's not going to buy it. Her brother's not going to buy it. But, these ladies will buy it because that's kind of how they want to see the world.
Yeah. Well, and also this lady is like a superhero to them, I would venture to guess. Like, just because of their own inability to, like, exert any influence.
Right. And she has all of this apparent independence, for sure, for sure. So Li Yong is, again, warning Mai Ling a little bit about, like, you're getting too proud. Like, are you raising yourself further up than you belong?
I see.
Yeah, so like it, and like that happened with O'Hara. Like, he was like, I'm gonna be chief, da 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 da, and Buckley's like, wow, no, you're not. So this like rising pride thing happens to several characters, I feel like, during this episode.
Ah, yes, satisfaction is indeed the death of desire.
But then we get to see more Joe Taslim, Li Yong just showing off.
He is, and he looks fantastic. Got his shirt off, and he is flexing as much as he could possibly flex. And then his buddy Kong Pak shows up.
Yeah, and again, it's like a kung fu wushu sort of thing where he's like very centered around his lower belly, hara area. I was like, okay, yep, that seems to be his thing.
Yeah, well, they do that iron body. He's real big into that iron body stuff. So, yeah. It's I don't know if that is an actual form or not, but I feel like in most martial arts movies, they like kind of take stuff they know and incorporate a bunch of different stuff into one thing.
Right, because I was like, there is some stuff like I even recognize from karate, but there are just things like that rotating around the center right in front of your chest and right in front of your lower abdomen. Like that is just common against all martial arts. Some of those hand postures, I was like, that's very familiar. But the fact that it's very tight into that square of his body, I was just like, yeah, that's for realsies.
Yeah. Well, and all Japanese, like all karate, comes from China. It's just yeah.
Oh yeah.
Via Okinawa. So they just stole the forms, and it doesn't matter what language you speak it in, it's still the same thing.
Right, but it was just using some really classic recognizable stuff. But yeah, then comes in Kong Pak, and I was like, Li Yong has a buddy.
Yeah, who isn't an evil snake person who might strangle him to death while they're fucking. Like, it's nice.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like an actual friend. Like it's not. It seems like they might actually be buds.
Well, and then you find out that they are really old friends, and that it was their friendship that kept their two tongs from fighting over the years. And so they're glad to be reunited, and that's when we find out that like Kong Pak's like, so I thought you were supposed to be in charge, and this lady's in charge, and she's a maniac. So what's going on with that? And he's just like, yep, she's in charge, and I'm smiling, so why don't we pour one out for our tong, and she's in charge.
Pour one out for Long Z.
Yeah. Let's I'm gonna leave say the quiet part out loud, like she is in charge. Pouring it out.
Yeah.
Keep your head attached to your shoulders. There are ears in the walls, sir.
But yeah, so that was a nice moment. But I was sort of thinking back to, because Li Yong also was sort of like chatting with Wang Chao. So this was another place, like he's sort of setting an anchor. Like when the floor falls out from under him, he's going to have a couple of places to grab onto and not plunge to the bottom.
This man must sleep with both eyes open. I mean, while this other man was speaking, I would have been sweating, like just sweat just pouring down my face, waiting for that crazy woman to pop out of a bowl of rice or something and stab us both in our eyes. Like, that woman is just the most evil. That is the type of evil I just am. Nope. Sneaky evil is not for me. It's too scary. I don't like it.
Yeah, the only time you know that she's doing that, her whole mind and body agree, is when she's stabbing someone.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Every other time, everything's off in divergent directions. But if we didn't see before, we find out that Lee is really working in a dive.
Why do you say that?
Well, as we go in, there's like, they show the dirt road in front of it, and there's just like this big canyon of water like flowing through the streets. You know, there's no good place to step in the streets. And he has to carry his own deliveries in through the front door. A classy place, you get your deliveries from the back, even at this time.
Oh, well, fancy. There was no classy place in the Barbary Coast. It was literally nothing but murderers and prostitutes and smugglers and pirates and brigands of every type. But villainy is afoot.
But why are we back here? Because O'Hara is here. And it turns out he's back here. He's been here before.
Because he loves Lee.
It's true.
We all love Lee.
Especially now that he doesn't have Lucy. He has nobody, so he has to come see Lee.
Yeah. he's gotta just, well, you gonna come back with me this time? Nope. Shit. Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Oh, bother.
And I have to say, the glassware through this entire episode was kind of bugging me. The glasses are too big and they're too clear, and those big glass pitchers didn't exist. Like, there was no such thing as a pitcher of beer at this time. Just no glass pitchers of beer. Like, the glass industry was too young. It was too expensive. It was still, and those fake crystal glasses in the rich guy's house, I was just like, ugh! But same way as with the costumes, they're just heightened. It's like, it's here to look good. I'm like, okay, let it go. Walk away. But the glassware was unrealistic.
Well, and if they had pitchers back in that day, they would have been their mugs, and they would have just gone with that. Because what the hell is the point of having a mug if you got a pitcher? So just give me the damn pitcher. What the hell are we doing?
Right.
Can you imagine how bad that dregs thing you were talking about that was just all the recycled beer, if they had that? If they had... So they're just like half-drunk pitchers of beer that are probably half piss everywhere, just getting dumped into this barrel at the end of the night. Oh, my God.
Because you think about beer mugs and beer takers at this age, like, that's the other reason you didn't want a glass of beer. You didn't want to actually see what was in there and floating around.
Jesus. Yeah. How did anybody survive that time period?
That's the thing. They didn't. Yeah. I mean, but you look at sort of population, and it, like, barely increased sort of from the time of the plague into, the 18th, 19th century, until we figured out clean water and vaccination. Population just stayed kind of steady.
Well, didn't we have... The world population was like 1 billion right before 1900 or something like that. It got high, and then the world wars took it out, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, you had some problems with famines, and then the wars definitely, like, cratered it. But the bounce back rate was always pretty slow. Like, it would sort of creep up, like, with colonization, and you had people expanding, and so there was more room, and people were growing more food, and they were spread out, so they weren't giving each other typhoid every other weekend. But you see this dramatic jump in the population when we figure out germ theory, clean water, and inoculation and vaccination. Like, all of a sudden, everybody's babies stop dying, and you have sort of this huge population growth.
Huh, that's weird. So, like, in places with, like, Mississippi, where they have birth fatality rates that are even, like, infant mortality rates even higher than Iraq, it might be due in part to the fact that they don't have potable water in many parts of Mississippi.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
So, living like you're in a third world country is not the way to go.
It will give you infant mortality and maternal mortality rates like a third world country.
Especially when your laws keep obstetricians from ever practicing in that state.
And midwives and doulas and anybody who might know a damn thing.
I don't even know that you'd want to say the word doula in Mississippi. You might be arrested for being a witch.
Yeah, there is some damn mind losing going on in places.
I can't believe we don't have potable water in 2 different states in the United States.
Oh, well, we already fixed it once. Isn't that enough?
I guess.
Are we done?
I guess.
Do we have to...
Once a century? Yeah.
Do we have to do maintenance?
We'll get to that right after we get dental care. Right after any of us get dental health care, we'll work on the water, I guess.
There you go. But basically, yeah, O'Hara can't get Lee back because Lee's like, no, man, you broke me. I'm broken. And
yeah, also, my head is falling off.
Yeah.
If you hadn't noticed all the tape around my neck and the fact that it keeps coming off and I'm holding it in my hands, my head keeps falling off.
yeah,
So,
I'm broken. And you know why I'm broken? Because you broke me.
Yeah, remember when you did all this? And that's the thing Lee keeps forgetting. He's like, would you come back? And it's like, the reason why my brain doesn't work anymore is you. And also, all of your problems are your fault. And so you want me to come back and help you fix your problems after you fucked me over the whole time? I don't think so.
And I have a real, she might be a bad idea girlfriend, but I can't keep her if I come back. So I'd rather have a bad idea girlfriend than no girlfriend at all.
At least a black woman is a legal person as opposed to a Chinese woman. Jesus.
Oh boy. But so O'Hara kind of big sigh, and Leary, you know what? He is frustrated trying to do things the political way. Enough with that crap.
Yeah. Oh, you say it's lumber prices? Well, let's go fix those lumber prices. So he pays the lumber guy a visit. Beats the shit out of him.
Just the way when he slides the paper across to the industrialist to say, I fixed your problem, and his knuckles are all just like bruised up to hell.
There's blood splatters all over the contract.
You're like, Leary, it's like, I'm going to go lean on my strengths. You know, I'm trying to learn this new system and I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate hating it. And I hate it.
Well, it was also amazing because the guy immediately comes back with, well, this doesn't entirely cover my shortfall. And Leary just looks at him and he's like, I know some other way I can cover your shortfall, basically. Like, yeah, I just fixed this shortfall. I can fix this other one. They're like, somebody will replace you. So make the numbers work. Yeah. And he gets Irishmen employed.
Yes. And not just 15, but 20. And I was like, and now he's sort of back to that negotiation he did with Mercer way back in early season 2. He was like, yeah, okay, maybe this is like my happy place, like a little political, but don't forget who you are and how you got to be who you are.
Yeah, just remember, occasionally you're going to have to break the leg of a scumbag in order to make things work.
And so Leary, as well, not too proud to fall back on his old skills.
Yeah, and they work. We could use a Leary nowadays.
Sometimes. And so, whereas Leary, he's like, you know what? The old way is kind of the good way. Chao and the boys are trying something new.
Yes. They decide they're going to rob those white guys, but then they find the white guys are well, most of the white guys are gone. And then now the rest of them who have remained are dead, and they have something better than money.
Yes, and because the whole episode, I was like, who are these guys? Like, what is their business? Why do they need guns? Why do they have cash to buy guns? Why does the guy have $100 times several times in his money roll? Like, what? Who are these dudes? What's going on? And finally, we get the answer. And we also find out, don't buy cheap guns from Chao and make him mad because he will screw you as the guy gets the back explosion into his neck.
This was a very gory. I didn't even look to see who directed this one, but it must have been somebody new because this was a gory ass episode.
Yeah, last name was like Nadezhda or something. I was like, so. Yeah, this was a new director I was like, between the hands and blowing off his head with the backwards gunfire, the misfire, I was like, wow.
It was History of Violence style, like Cronenberg-esque gore. It was nice. I appreciated
it. You can have fun with that. I'll watch it through my hands. But we find out that, like you said, the reason it's better than finding a pile of cash is because who are these guys?
They are counterfeiters.
Yes.
So, Greta.
Yes.
One thing I think we might want to explain before we wrap this up is explain exactly why counterfeiting was such a big deal back then.
Well, I mean, I know that paper money was newish at this point.
Yeah, and it was backed by specie back then. And so when you see these Republicans get on TV and they're like, buy all this gold. Well, there's a reason why we don't have money backed by currency anymore. And it's because back in the Civil War, when we did have money backed by currency, counterfeiting was a real big thing for the Confederates as a way to generate cash because they didn't have any. So what they would do was they would counterfeit American money, take it to a bank, and they would have to give you gold in return for that paper. So they were just stealing money from the American government as gold, and then they could sell it to or give it to the Brits for guns or food or whatever. And that was a really big deal. So I would assume these guys were former Confederates who are in the business of counterfeiting now. And that's actually why the Secret Service got started in the 1860s, was to stop this during the Civil War.
Yeah, I was going to say the Secret Service, yes, it was originally an anti-counterfeiting force. Like, that was their first job.
Yeah. And they were very, very bad at bodyguarding presidents. But they got better at it over time.
But yeah, what you're talking about, like, yeah, you could take this piece of paper, go into a bank and say, I would like to put this in for actual hard metal. And so you had gold certificates and you had silver certificates. And when I was cleaning out our grandparents' house, we did find a stack of $1 bills that had the notation on them that they were silver certificates.
Ooh, those are worth money.
Yes and no. I mean,
oh, they're not?
Not as much. They, like, at the time we looked them up and we talked to a couple of different dealers, and they were actually worth kind of like a $1 bill marked that way was worth like $1.20, and we found like 20 of them. And so it was much easier to just sell them to a dealer who gave us like a little bit for them. Like, what, we're gonna go find a place to turn them into, like, it wasn't worth it. Because,
well, that's disappointing. Antiques Roadshow and all of those endless commercials for gold coins by the on the Republican channels.
Well, and it's another thing. Like, it's just not very convertible. Like, oh, well, I'll have gold and I can go do this. Like, you can't go spend it at Walgreens. All you can pretty much use gold bullion to buy is like weird survival food, dubious ammunition.
Yeah. Guns on a reality
I bet
show.
You could buy some nutritional supplements and probably a lot of meth.
Yeah. Oh, you could definitely buy guns at a gun show with
that's true.
With gold specie. What a crowd that is too. Wow.
Yeek. Yeah, but as we learned from Wang Chao, sometimes you get what you pay for.
Yes, yeah, that was great. So that to anybody who has not seen this episode, Wang Chao has sold guns to these white people at the beginning for $100, and the guy is kind of like messing around with him, going, "It looks old and this and that," and he's like, "Yeah, well, you get what you pay for. And I told you if you wanted good guns, it's $200, but if you want shitty old guns, it's $100. You said $100. Here's your shitty old guns." So at the end, somebody draws down on Chao, one of those times where he has to face death. It's probably the 16th time that day.
Yes.
And the gun backfires in the guy's face and sets his beard on fire, and it's quite something.
Yes. I was just thinking, like, okay, it's one thing to be a Chinese opium baron. Like, there's a certain amount of mad that the government and the cops are going to get at you for dealing opium. Like, they hate it, but they kind of have a thing for it. If they find out that you're counterfeiters, I can't imagine. It's like, isn't it going to be like 10 times worse?
I think we're going to see Pinkertons in this season. We're going to see Secret Service agents. We're going to see a lot of weird, evil, weaselish people in this season, I think. Wouldn't you tend to... I mean, from what I do know about this time period... The people who worked on this type of thing were former very evil criminals who had switched sides so they didn't get hung, basically.
Right. Like, again, it's going out and stealing your money is one thing, but if you can figure out a way to use the laws to make beating up people legally get you money, they're going to go do that.
Yeah, they go legit.
Yeah.
Al Capone would have done it if he could have.
Yeah, and so yeah, because we've seen, hints of the Pinkertons. We've seen like there's sort of going to be like the rise of the labor violence is coming along. And now with the Chinese gangsters going into counterfeiting, I was like, yeah, a lot of people are going to have the big mat on. So yeah, while Lee just may have a bad idea girlfriend, Chao's setting them up for a bad idea profession.
And as well, you foretold doom for Ah Toy in Paradise, Ah Toy and Nellie Davenport in Paradise. So this is really shaping up to be quite the explosive ending to a season. I don't know how many characters are going to make it into season 4.
Right. Yeah. Usually you can depend on the plot armor to work pretty well as long as you're not in some George R.R. Martin flick, because he'll take out main characters. He doesn't care. But for the rest of us, then it'll be interesting to see, how far Mai Ling will overextend herself, how dark Buckley's going to go, how, like I was talking about, Leary last season didn't seem to want to expand his empire. I feel like I was wrong, and I'm willing to admit it. He feels like he wants to sort of expand kind of that. And, how desperate will O'Hara get? Because you can see him kind of like working up some sort of resentment, revenge, something at Buckley.
Well,
too.
what Buckley did was he brought in this ringer with his own picked men from New York, who, and as we know, East Coast people, when they get to the West Coast, we show our ass. We don't blend. We don't do any of that. We just keep acting East Coast, and it's oil and water. And it's going to go bad. There's going to be an internecine fight, I think, between the New York guys and the San Francisco guys.
It'll be, I mean, the whole East Coast, West Coast, Puff Daddy, whatever, yeah.
Tupac and Biggie.
Yeah, we've been doing that since we got to the West Coast. Like that, yeah.
It's going to be fun. We are rolling. This season got off to a start. This was a fun episode.
Yeah, they didn't really have to introduce any personalities or characters to us like they did in the first season or even kind of the second season. They're just like, who everybody is, so let's go.
Let's go. And I think that I haven't watched many George R.R. Martin stuff, but I do know that the longevity of characters in TV shows seems to be inversely proportional to the number of flaccid penises shown on screen in any given hour. So I think we're going to be all right. They'll probably keep everybody alive. I haven't seen a flaccid penis yet in Warrior, so I think they're going to stay in there.
We shall. That is a scale I have never considered. All right.
I mean, I have never seen more flaccid penises than I have in a single hour of watching one of those Game of Thrones shows. That was wild. Nothing against it. It was just unexpected. And it was like, I kept walking through the room, and every time I saw it, somebody had their dick out. And I'm like, what is going on?
Just so much, just as like naked for the sake of naked. I don't know.
It was by those.
I have no idea. All right. Well,
I'm glad the Game of Thrones was not in the 19th century, because that was a boring ass show.
Hey, look, you put enough politics into anything and you can make it boring. Star Wars proved that.
Well, Star Trek proved that in every single fucking TV show and movie they ever had.
Well, like if
just
it was
nothing but people quibbling about the legalities of interstellar space shit.
Right, but you're like, Star Wars started out like a nice shoot 'em up Western in space, and now we're talking trade contracts. Clonk.
Dun, dun. Oh, that's what Star Wars did too. Is it the Clone Confederation versus the whatever? Yeah. The Triple Entente.
Oh my god. Okay, well, so next week we have episode 2, which I neglected to look up the title for it because I was so, like, literally I had a new hairstyle by the time I got to the end of this episode. There was so much going on.
I did have one question for you regarding going back to that doily situation, the gold doily.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as saffron? Saffron dye?
Yes.
Saffron. So might that have been silk thread that was dyed saffron? And if so, what would be more expensive? Saffron thread or gold thread?
Ooh, huh. I think at that point, saffron thread would have been more expensive because the mechanization of making gold wire had come around.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, Queen Elizabeth, one of her colors that she used was an orangey gold, and that was because they had imported saffron into England and they're actually growing it locally. And so, rich people would be dyeing their clothes with saffron as just like an incredible flex.
Okay, cool. So which do you think that was? It was probably the saffron thread, because gold thread would not make for a good doily.
If you're only using it for things, but still, I think the saffron would be a bigger flex. Like, those ladies might not know it, but Mai Ling would.
True. And eventually, if any of them got close enough, then they'd know.
I don't know if the 19th century 19th century America, I don't know if they knew about saffron anymore. It might have fallen out of their consciousness. I don't know.
Well, Mai Ling would have known about it. I mean, she could have brought it from or imported it from
China. Oh, she would have known, but I don't know if those San Francisco ladies would have known. That's a really interesting question. I mean, America forgot about all the spices, so why not saffron too?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's because we were taught by the British, who forgot that they even had salt and pepper on their fucking table. A quarter teaspoon of garlic. Good God. Serves 8.
I have the recipes. I can show you. All right, so we will be back next week with episode 2, and we will have watched it and know the title and all of that good stuff. So, where can I find you in the meantime on the internet?
On the Instagrams. I am at Plague of Strength on Instagram, posting every day about awesome stuff. How about yourself?
You can find me on my other podcast, The History of American Food, and I am, by this point, wrapping up my years of war and adventure and heading straight at, the early 19th century and how we mechanize our way into the Civil War. And, it's the birth of sort of big American food. Like, it doesn't get big in that period, but it is so ready to happen right after the Civil War. But how we get there is kind of interesting.
The choo-choo.
Yes.
It's Thomas the Train time.
Yes. The early railroads they're gonna decide it all.
Well, very fun. And Coney Island will bring us all sorts of delights. Well, actually, it was mostly the expositions that brought us the great foods, right? Or introduced the great foods, and then they were popularized in Coney Island.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we will be back next week.
Yes, next week. Next week it is. Goodbye.
Okay. Bye. We're on Instagram at PCG Podcast. And you can always reach out to us by email at pcgpodcasters@gmail.com. And you can find more dope beats like this one from royalraven.com.